He walked into that bar like he had every Tuesday for the past 20 years. Same corner stool, same quiet nod. But this time, the room didn't welcome him. A young biker had something to prove. The old man didn't flinch. But when the door swung open and a figure in uniform stepped through the shadow, the silence was louder than any shout. And what happened next? Nobody in that bar would forget it. If you believe respect is earned, not demanded, and that some people never stop serving, hit the like, share, and subscribe to Endless Stories. Because some heroes don't raise their voices. They raise the whole room. Every Tuesday at 5 p.m. sharp, Earl Whitaker walked into Charlie's Tap and Grill. Same door, same rhythm. He'd nod to the bartender, lift 2 fingers. Not for a beer, but a black coffee. And take the same stool at the far end of the bar, by the jukebox that hadn't worked since 2013. He was 76, wiry but upright, and always wore the same faded green bomber jacket. The back was scuffed from years of leaning against truck doors, bar stools, and life itself. Over his heart, a patch still clung with tired threads. U.S. Army, retired. Most nights, nobody gave Earl trouble. They didn't give him much of anything, really, just polite distance. Charlie, the owner and barkeep, always greeted him with the same dry humor. "Coffee's hot, Earl. Just like your attitude." "Yeah," Earl would mumble, "and about as bitter." But that Tuesday night, something felt different. A group of bikers had taken over 3 tables near the center of the bar. Loud voices, louder laughs. Their jackets bore patches from nowhere official, just homemade symbols, skulls, flags, slogans that looked tough but said very little. One of them, younger than the rest, had a voice that cut through music and walls. The kind of voice that didn't just speak, it challenged. Earl noticed them the moment he walked in. Not because they were loud, because they were watching him. The way animals watch another animal limping across open ground. A kind of interest that had nothing to do with curiosity. He sat anyway, nodded to Charlie. Coffee arrived in under a minute. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then the voice called out. "Hey, old-timer," the young biker said. "You get that jacket off eBay?" Earl didn't respond. He stirred sugar into his coffee, slow and precise. The biker laughed. "Come on, man. It's a real question. You really serve? Or you just wear the patch to get free stuff?" Charlie shot the young man a look. "Ease up, kid. He's been comin' here longer than you've been legal." "I'm just a skin," the biker replied, raising his hands mockingly. "Guy could be anybody. Stolen valor's a thing, right?" That word, stolen valor, landed like a slap in the quiet of the bar. Earl didn't move, just took a slow sip. Another biker chimed in. "Bet he sat behind a desk. Filed papers. Never saw dirt." That one made Earl smile. Not big, just enough for the corner of his mouth to twitch. Then the young one stood up, walked toward him. Big guy, boots heavy on the old wood floor. He stopped 3 feet from Earl's stool. "Hey," he said. "I'm talking to you." Earl finally turned, looked the kid straight in the eye. No fear, just weariness, the kind that didn't need defending anymore. "I heard you," Earl said calmly. "I just don't answer to boys who think loud is the same as brave." The bar went quiet. The biker's jaw clenched. He leaned in. "You got a smart mouth for someone who might be faking it." Earl didn't blink. "And you've got a lot of patches for someone who's never earned one." Charlie stepped in. "That's enough, both of you." But the biker wasn't done. He grabbed Earl's jacket collar, not violently, but enough to make a point. "I think we should see what's under this jacket. Might be a Goodwill tag." And that's when the front door swung open. A gust of dry wind came in first, then a boot, then a figure. A tall woman in full dress blues, silver oak leaves on her collar. Her uniform was spotless. Her eyes even more so. She didn't say a word, just stood there, silhouetted against the sunset. The biker turned around, confused by the sudden hush, his hand still holding Earl's collar. The woman's voice was low, steady. "Take your hand off that man. Now." Everyone in the bar froze. Even Charlie didn't move. The biker scoffed. "Who the hell are you?" The woman stepped forward, into the light. The medals on her chest caught the glow. But it was the patch on her sleeve that made Earl sit up straight. Not Army. Not Marine. Something rarer. A unit that didn't get named out loud. I said, she repeated. Take your hand off the sergeant. This time, the biker let go. Slowly, Earl stood. Not aggressively. Not angrily. Just stood. The woman looked at him and gave the kind of nod soldiers only give each other after seeing too much. Didn't expect to see you here, Sergeant Whitaker, she said quietly. Earl gave a half-smile. Didn't expect to be seen at all. She turned back to the room. I don't know what stories he's told, but let me tell you one. This man served in places no cameras ever reached. He pulled 3 men from a burning transport under sniper fire. He spent 2 years training special units who now train your children. And when command tried to bury a scandal, he took the fall so others could walk clean. She paused. Let it land. If anyone here thinks they've earned the right to question his patch, you're welcome to step outside with me. No one moved. Not even the biker. Earl sat back down. Took another sip of his coffee. Still hot, he said. The woman gave a small laugh. Then looked at Charlie. Mind if I buy the sergeant a slice of pie? Charlie grinned. You can buy the whole bar around after that. The biker walked back to his table, eyes lowered. The room began to breathe again. But no one forgot what they'd just seen. When the bar emptied, and the coffee cooled, Earl and the woman in uniform sat alone at the far end of the counter. Charlie knew enough not to interrupt. He wiped down glasses he'd already cleaned twice and gave them space. Outside, the sunset had collapsed into a navy blue sky, and the only sounds were from the soft clink of spoons and the hum of the neon sign that buzzed louder than it should have. I haven't heard anyone call me sergeant in 20 years, Earl said. The woman smiled. Not wide but real. Well, I haven't worn this uniform in public in about 10, so I guess we're both making exceptions tonight. Earl looked at her, really looked this time. Not just the medals or the posture, but the eyes. Eyes that had seen war and bureaucracy, and knew the difference. I don't think I caught your name, he said. She extended her hand.
Lieutenant-colonel Maya Sloan.
Retired. Sort of. Earl raised an eyebrow. Sort of. I still get called in when things get complicated. That was more than a complication, he said, gesturing back toward where the biker had stood. That was a boy with too much muscle and no memory. Maya chuckled. And you handled it better than most would. He shrugged. Wasn't worth a fight. No, she said. But it was worth being seen. That stopped Earl. He set his cup down. You weren't just passing through, he said. She didn't answer right away. I came for you, Sergeant. His shoulders stiffened. Not with fear, with something older. A soldier's sixth sense, trained to hear what isn't said. I don't do anything anymore, he said. No speaking gigs.
No parades.
No medals. That chapter's closed. Maya reached into her coat and pulled out a thin manila folder. It was unmarked.
No seal.
No stamps. Just a crease down the middle from being handled too much. She slid it across the counter. Earl stared at it. I haven't seen a paper file in years. Because this one's not supposed to exist. He opened it. The first page was a black and white photo. Blurry. Taken from a distance. A jungle. A team of 4 soldiers. One of them, unmistakably, was Earl Younger, but with the same eyes. The page was labeled, Operation Palegate, Redacted Clearance Level Omega. I thought this was scrubbed, he said. It was, Maya replied. But someone kept a backup. Someone who believed the truth mattered more than orders. He kept flipping. There were comm logs, debriefs, maps with ink so faded it looked like bruises, and then a handwritten letter, folded, torn at the edges. He recognized it immediately. That's my handwriting. You wrote it after Palegate. It was never submitted through official channels. But it got archived anyway, buried deep. I found it last year while reviewing sealed training material for a case study. Your name rang a bell. And when I saw the letter, she paused. I couldn't sleep for 2 days. Earl looked down at the letter again. It wasn't a report. It was a confession. He had written it the day after returning from a mission where half his team never came home, where the coordinates were wrong, where air support was late on purpose, and where orders had been given to leave no trace, including the men. He'd written the letter to no one in particular. Maybe to God, maybe to his mother, maybe to a future that would never ask for it. I buried that report, he said, because if I didn't, they'd bury me too. Maya nodded. I know. That's why I kept looking. Why? He asked. Why me? There are plenty of soldiers with unfinished files. Because I used to be one of them, she said. Earl turned toward her, startled. I was 16 when I saw you testify on a broken radio broadcast. Congressional inquiry into the Pale Gate Op. You were younger than everyone in that room, and the only one not reading from a script. Earl remembered that day, remembered the committee, the way they looked at him like he was dirt wearing boots. I never forgot the way your voice didn't shake, Maya said, even when they tried to make you doubt what you saw. That testimony got sealed. Yeah, but not before it made me join. They were quiet a long time after that. Finally, Earl asked the question he had avoided for decades. What happened to the rest of the file? Maya looked away, toward the bar mirror, where their reflection seemed older than the room deserved. Someone's cleaning house, she said. Quietly. Old missions. Buried ops. Anyone who still has pieces of the puzzle. Earl's eyes narrowed. You think they're coming? I think they already are. She stood, buttoned her coat. I have a safe house about 90 miles west. If you want to disappear again, I can make that happen. Earl shook his head. I'm tired of disappearing. Let them come. Maya gave him a long look, then handed him one final item. A dog tag. Not his, just a number. One he remembered from a body never recovered. Earl closed his hand around it. The war wasn't over. It had just changed uniforms. The night air in northern Texas was dry, brittle, and full of ghosts. Earl Whitaker sat alone on his porch, the manila folder still beside him, unopened again, though he knew every page by heart. His fingers traced the edge of the dog tag Maya had left with him. The number etched into the metal wasn't just familiar. It was carved into him, somewhere deeper than memory. 42107T. Morales. Morales, he whispered, voice barely more than breath. You were the one who wasn't supposed to be there, and the one who saved us all. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. 42 years earlier, deep in the jungles of Cambodia, Earl had led a team of 5 on an operation codenamed Pale Gate. The official mission was recon and retrieval, search for missing personnel presumed captured. What they were actually sent to do, nobody ever really said. It was always classified need to know. But when they dropped into the trees, their maps were blank, their radios ghosted, and their evac time was already marked past the fuel limit. Morales was the youngest on the team. Barely 20, green as they come, but sharp. Sharp in a way you don't teach, sharp like he knew what wasn't being said. 3 days into the op, they found something. Not prisoners, not enemies, cages, but not for animals. They were too tall, too wide, and what was inside wasn't tied, wasn't bruised, just sitting, waiting. They looked like people, but something about them was off, too still, too silent, and they weren't guarded. Morales said it first. This isn't a prison, it's a test site. The moment he said it, the jungle seemed to shift. They weren't supposed to see this. The orders came through encrypted. Withdraw immediately. Leave no trace. Burn evidence. But Morales had already started unlocking one of the cages. Earl still remembered the way his voice cracked when he said, Sir, I think this one's trying to speak. But she's not using words. That was the last clear thing he remembered before the shooting started. They weren't ambushed by hostiles. The bullets came from the tree line behind them. Friendly fire. American calibers. Earl had tackled Morales to the ground. 2 of the team were already down. Another vanished into the brush, never to be found. Morales took one to the chest, just beneath the plate. still breathing but fading fast. Earl dragged him for 2 miles through mud, roots, and mosquitoes the size of coins. The evac wasn't coming. No signal. No command. They were left. But somehow, someway, Earl got them out. Called in an emergency evac using an old distress sequence no one should have responded to. A retired pilot picked them up out of sheer luck. Or maybe guilt. Morales didn't make it past the airstrip. Earl had held his hand the whole flight. The last words Morales whispered weren't about pain. They were about the woman in the cage. She didn't blink, he said. Like she knew. Knew we were too late. Then he went still. Earl never spoke about the cages again. The official debrief erased everything. Morales was listed as Kia hostile contact. The op labeled a failure. Earl's name was quietly removed from the commendation list. A month later, he was reassigned to a desk. Then early retirement. His records were flagged with a vague psychological annotation. Combat judgment compromised during hostile extraction. In other words, not trustworthy anymore. For decades, Earl had accepted it. He'd carried Morales's dog tag in his jacket pocket, never showing it to anyone. He visited Morales's mother every Memorial Day until she passed. He never remarried, never moved, never raised his voice when they told him he didn't qualify for certain veteran services. Never protested when he wasn't invited to reunion panels. Because what they took from him wasn't rank or recognition. They took his right to grieve out loud. But they never took his silence. That he gave willingly. Until now. Earl stood up slowly from the porch chair. His joints ached, but his mind felt sharper than it had in years. The fear that once kept him quiet was still there, but it was older now. Smaller. He walked to the shed behind his house. Inside, wrapped in plastic and dust, was a crate. He opened it. Inside were 4 things. The binder labeled OPG 731. Not for distribution. A voice recorder. A weather-worn photograph of his team, all 5 of them grinning like fools, and a single flash drive. He plugged the drive into his old laptop. A black screen lit up with one word. Redacted. He entered a passphrase. One only Morales knew. One they used as a joke. Back when they thought things were just hard, not impossible. The files opened. Photos, maps, sensor logs, audio of the woman in the cage, whispering something no linguist had ever been able to decode. And one video. Earl didn't play it. Not yet. He leaned back, staring at the screen. Tomorrow he would meet Maya again. Tomorrow they would make a choice. Expose what they had or destroy it forever. But tonight, for the first time in 42 years, Earl let himself whisper the name of a mission he was never allowed to speak of. Pale Gate, he said, and the wind outside paused, like it too had waited to hear that name again. Earl hadn't been to Amarillo in 20 years. But Maya insisted they meet there. Not in an office, not in a base, but at a burned-out diner off Highway 287. The kind of place that still had an old jukebox in the corner, melted from a grease fire, and menus nailed to the wall like tombstones. He got there at noon sharp. She was already inside, at the booth furthest from the window, her uniform gone. Now in civilian clothes. Boots, jeans, flannel. But she still sat like a soldier. Spine straight, eyes scanning exits. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said as soon as Earl sat down. "I don't do introductions," he replied. "Never been much for reunions. This one's different." Before he could respond, the door opened. Footsteps. Heavy. Limping. Earl turned. The man who entered looked like hell in a worn-out leather coat. Beard untrimmed. Eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. One hand gripped a cane, the other stuffed in his jacket pocket. But Earl knew the posture. And the limp. "Garrison?" he whispered. The man stopped in front of the booth. "Hello, Earl." Earl stood slowly. "You're supposed to be dead." Garrison pulled off the glasses. His eyes were bloodshot but sharp. "Yeah, so were you." There was no handshake. Just silence. And a stare that lasted a beat too long. Earl sat back down. Garrison did the same. Maya watched them both like a chess match. "I found him 6 months ago," she said. living under an alias in New Mexico. He still had the implant. Earl turned. The tracker. Garrison nodded. Mine didn't shut off properly. They tried to extract me 2 years after Pale Gate. Didn't go well. Earl's hands tightened. We thought you vanished. You never called for help. Never sent a signal. Garrison leaned forward. Because I wasn't alone when I left. The air in the booth dropped 10 degrees. You're saying someone survived? Earl asked. Not someone, Garrison said. Something. Maya placed a photo on the table. It was blurry. Night vision. Jungle. The same cages. But this time one of them was open. Empty. Tracks led away into the dark. I didn't know what I was doing, Garrison continued. I was shot. Delirious. But something guided me out. I thought it was hallucination. Maybe it was. He looked at Earl. But I've had the same dream every week for 40 years. And I know now it wasn't a dream. Earl didn't blink. You think whatever was in that cage saved you? No, Garrison said. I think it used me. Maya laid out a second file. 6 months ago, a drone scan over Laos picked up unusual energy signatures. Same pattern as the equipment in Pale Gate. We sent a team to investigate. She opened the folder. Satellite images. A burned clearing. A spiral trench carved into the earth, like something had tried to rise out. They didn't find anything, she said. But the team reported hallucinations. Nausea. Dreams. Same kind Garrison's had for decades. Earl leaned back. This wasn't just about us, he said. It was about whatever they were studying. Maya nodded. And now, it's reactivating. Silence again. Then Garrison said something Earl never expected to hear. I want to go back. Earl's face hardened. You're insane. I have to know, Garrison said. If they're still out there, if they're watching. If we left something behind that's still waiting. Waiting for what? Garrison met his gaze. For us. Earl stood up, ready to walk away. But Maya said, They're already looking, Earl. Not just for answers, for you. Someone opened your sealed file. 2 nights ago. Earl froze. How do you know? Because I got the alert. The only way anyone gets in is through military command chain. And guess who recently returned from retirement? She slid a new document across the table. A name. A photo. Brigadier General Hollis Trent. Earl's jaw clenched. He was the one who wrote the fake debrief after Pale Gate, he said. And now, Maya added, he's in charge of Special Threat Research Division. The same one that never existed, until last month. Earl sat back down. His voice came out low. We're not chasing ghosts. We're being hunted. Maya nodded. That's why we need to move first. She opened a final photo. Grainy. Taken from a long-range scope. In the center, a clearing in the jungle. But not a cage. A door. Stone. Carved. Covered in moss. But clearly opened. I think they never finished the experiment, she said. And now, Garrison added, they want to. Earl closed his eyes. For decades, he thought silence was protection. But maybe silence was just delay. And the time to be quiet had run out. They touched down under heavy clouds, somewhere near the border of Laos, under false names and with forged clearance. But the weight they carried was real. Earl didn't need body armor. He said it made him feel more like a target than protection. Maya wore civilian gear, passing as a field researcher with a clipboard tucked under her arm. Garrison didn't try to pass as anything. He looked like what he was. A man pulled out of the shadows by something older than orders and stronger than fear. The jungle swallowed them within minutes. It wasn't just thick, it was claustrophobic. Vines like fingers, humidity like breath. The bugs didn't chirp, they whispered. Every branch crackled like it remembered Boots. Van, their fixer, led without a word. Locals called this part of the forest Nam Kui, Devil's Grip, and none of them would follow past a certain tree marked by 3 horizontal slashes. That's where Van stopped and handed Maya the rest of the coordinates. You go alone now, he said. It don't like too many. Earl took the lead. His steps were slow but deliberate. The jungle floor felt soft, almost like it was inhaling each time they moved. For 2 miles, they walked in silence until the trees began to thin. Then it came into view. It didn't rise so much as emerge. A structure. A stone face, half buried by moss, half glowing under a shaft of broken sunlight. It wasn't a ruin. It was intact, preserved, like something that had never been discovered but simply waiting. A door 7 feet tall, 4 feet wide, carved out of stone so black it drank the light. Around it, the jungle bent away. Roots stopped short. The air was colder by at least 10 degrees. "That's not natural," Maya murmured. Earl approached and placed a palm flat against it. Warm. Not hot. Not alive. But pulsing. Garrison moved to the side and traced the carvings. Symbols, 5 of them, etched deep into the frame, for were dulled, covered in green and age. One was glowing faintly. It wasn't just familiar. It was exact. "That's Morales's unit insignia," Earl said. Maya stared, her lips parting in shock. Someone marked this after Pale Gate. Garrison was already circling the door. "This was here when I got lost. I saw it. I thought I was delirious." There was a figure in front of it. Small. Human. It touched the door, and then vanished. They moved behind the stone and found more carvings. Not military. Not ancient. Just deliberate. At the center was a single English word, etched clean and deep. "Remember." Beneath it, a shallow groove. Earl reached into his pocket. He hadn't let go of Morales's dog tag since the moment they left the States. Without a word, he pressed it into the groove. The wall responded. Not with noise, with motion. The carving pulsed once. Then again. Then the entire door shifted, not sliding open, but parting like lungs. A cold breath of air surged outward. Carried no dust, no mold, no decay. Just metal. Sharp and sterile. Behind the stone, darkness. Deeper than shadow. They turned on flashlights. Inside was a chamber. Steps leading downward. Stone carved smooth by something precise and inhuman. The walls bore handprints. Dozens. Hundreds. All sizes. Human and not. Burned into the surface. Scratched. Pressed. They weren't alone. Maya raised her seismic scanner. There's movement. Rhythmic. Like breath. No heat signature. Earl stepped into the chamber. The moment his boot crossed the threshold, the light behind them died. Total black. Then a hum. Not audible. Felt in the ribs. In the back of the throat. The kind of sound that meant something was thinking. They moved down the steps. Then a sound broke the dark. Footsteps. Not fast. Not threatening. Just approaching. They turned. A silhouette emerged from the dark corridor ahead. Short. Slender. Covered in what looked like ash or soot. The figure moved with purpose. Not aimless like a survivor, but like someone returning from a room they had always belonged in. And then, as the beam of Maya's light landed on the figure's face, Earl's voice broke through the dark. "Morales." The figure stepped forward. The features were familiar, uniged, unchanged. But the eyes, they were not Morales's eyes. They were wider, too focused, as if something behind them had woken up. Garrison stumbled back, hand on the wall. "That's not him," he said. But Earl didn't move, because something in the way the figure breathed matched the rhythm from the chamber walls. And Earl knew then, this door hadn't just opened for them. It had been waiting. For him. For this moment. And whatever had worn Morales's face was ready to speak. Earl didn't blink. He couldn't. His eyes locked onto the figure standing just beyond the last step. The face washed in pale flashlight glow. Morales, or something wearing Morales, stood perfectly still. The body was the same build, the same scars, even the slight forward lean Morales always had when trying to hear someone better. But the eyes were wrong. Not dead. Not empty. Worse, they were patient. No one moved. Then, slowly, the figure tilted its head. Not like someone confused. Like someone testing how long it would take for the others to break. Garrison's voice came low, shaken. Not from fear but from recognition. "He was shot. I saw it. Chest wound. He bled out in my arms. Earl whispered. That's not blood in him now. Maya gripped her scanner tight. It was still pulsing, still tracking the same rhythm. But now it was sinking. The breathing, the footsteps, the vibrations in the floor, they were matching their own. Adapting. The figure finally spoke. Hello, Earl. The voice was Morales's, but the cadence was slightly off. Like someone who had listened to thousands of recordings and only now tried speaking aloud for the first time. It sounded careful. You remember me? It said. Earl swallowed hard. I carried you out. You died on the chopper. You buried me, the figure corrected. But not all of me. Behind them, the door closed. Not with a slam. With a whisper. A seal. Maya turned to scan for another exit, but there was none. Just the descending chamber ahead and the echo of their own heartbeats layered over one another. One by one, like threads being wound too tightly. What do you want? She asked. The figure smiled. Not want. Need. Earl stepped forward. You're not Morales.
No.
But I am his memory, his shape, his pain, and yours. The walls responded. They lit with symbols, not drawn, but glowing faintly under the stone. Words, maybe, or warnings. None of them made sense. But one image pulsed behind the figure. A hand, open, and in the center an eye. You came through the gate, the figure continued. You weren't supposed to, but one of you stayed. And we remembered. What the hell is we? Garrison asked. The figure blinked. We were not one. Now we are. Earl reached into his jacket, his fingers finding the edge of the old flash drive he'd brought, the one with the original sensor logs from Palegate. He pulled it out slowly, holding it in his palm. The figure's eyes tracked it like it recognized something ancient. You still carry the key, it said. I don't even know what it is, Earl muttered. It is the memory of truth, the figure replied. And that is all we need to survive. The walls began to tremble softly, not as if under threat, as if waking. Maya turned to Earl, her voice hushed but sharp. This chamber isn't just underground. It's alive. Look at the scans. The temperature's dropping, but the air's still circulating. It's not reacting to light. It's reacting to us. Garrison stepped toward the figure. If you're Morales, tell me what you whispered before you died. Tell me what she said. The girl in the cage. The figure didn't hesitate. She said, you should not have looked. Garrison froze, because no one else knew that line. He'd never spoken it aloud. Not to Earl. Not even to himself. It had haunted him for decades. That one whispered warning from a woman who shouldn't have been there. Locked in a cage not built for her. You remember, the figure said again, stepping closer. Earl raised a hand. Stay back. I mean no harm. That's exactly what harm always says. The figure stopped. Then let me show you. It lifted its hand. No weapon. No gesture of aggression. Just a touch against the stone wall beside it. Instantly the wall rippled. Not like water, but like muscle. And a window opened. Not literal. More like a vision. Inside they saw the past. Tailgate. The drop zone. Their team. Only it wasn't through their eyes. It was the perspective of the caged figures. They saw themselves arrive. They saw the fear, the confusion. The moment Morales knelt beside one of the women, and the woman reached for his face, not in terror, but in recognition. You weren't the threat, the figure said. But those who sent you were. The vision shifted. A lab. American. Underground. Blinding white lights and clipboards. The same figures now in restraints. Being studied. Prodded. Recorded. We weren't enemies, the figure whispered. We were warnings. Earl felt his chest tighten, the weight of decades of silence pressing harder than ever before. He had believed they stumbled on a covert prison. But this was a farm, a test site, prophecy misread as a problem. Maya was trembling. What do you want us to do? The figure turned its head toward her, and the expression on its face was no longer strange. It was grief. Remember us. Then the ground shook. Harder now. But not from within. From above. Explosions. Muffled but close. Garrison's radio flickered to life. A voice? Broken and static-laced. Target acquired. Engaging ground collapse. Maya's eyes widened. They followed us. Earl grabbed the figure. You need to go. You can't be found. I'm already known, it said, and vanished. Not ran. Not fled. Simply blinked out of existence. Behind them, the chamber began to crack. The door at the top split apart, and light poured in along with boots, shadows, and orders barked too late. They had come to bury the truth again. But this time, the truth had already walked out. The sun was already low when Earl, Maya, and Garrison emerged from the breach, covered in ash and memory. The military perimeter was still forming. Uniforms swarming like hornets, shouting into radios, pointing at sensor gear that couldn't make sense of what had just happened. Behind them, the jungle trembled, but the gate had closed. Not with violence, not with collapse. It had simply vanished into the earth, like it was never there to begin with. A major in dark glasses stormed toward them, flanked by soldiers. You're all in violation of multiple federal. Earl cut him off without raising his voice. Tell General Trent we found what he buried, and that it still remembers. The major hesitated, lips parting like he wanted to argue. But something in Earl's expression stopped him. He nodded stiffly. You'll be escorted to debrief. They were taken separately, put in rooms with gray walls and too many cameras. Days passed. Maybe weeks. The questions came slow at first, then fast, like they were hoping to catch someone tired enough to slip. Maya played the game. She answered clinically, precisely. Garrison said nothing. Earl stared down every face across the table like he was still in the jungle, and they were just vines pretending to be people. Then the interviews stopped. The silence after was more dangerous than any interrogation. 2 weeks later, Earl was put in a black SUV with no license plate and driven to a building outside D.C., one of those anonymous glass boxes that pretend to be a bank or a startup. Inside, a conference room. One man waiting. General Trent. Earl didn't salute. He sat without being told. Trent didn't look up from the file he was reading. You've made quite a mess. No mess, Earl replied. Just memory. Trent closed the folder. You had your chance 40 years ago. You walked away. I was told to. Trent leaned forward. You don't understand what was at stake. I do now, Earl said. You weren't trying to protect people. You were trying to control something you didn't understand. It was a threat. No, Earl said, voice steady. It was a warning. And you didn't listen. Trent stood. Walked to the window. You've got enough years behind you to know what happens to men who come back with stories like yours. They get retired. Quietly. Decorated or discredited, it doesn't matter. They disappear. Earl stood too. I disappeared once. Not again. Trent turned to him. What are you going to do, Sergeant? Write a book? Leak files? You have no proof. I don't need proof, Earl said. I have names. Faces. A girl in a cage who never blinked. A man who came back speaking with someone else's voice. A jungle that remembers what the world forgets. You can bury the files. You can bury the bodies. But you can't bury the rhythm. Trent stepped forward. If you speak, others will suffer. Not just you. People you've tried to protect. Earl met his eyes. If I stay quiet, more will disappear. And next time, they won't come back. For a moment, Trent said nothing. Then, he gave a small nod. Not of agreement, but understanding. You've made your choice. Earl left the room. Outside, Maya and Garrison were waiting in the car. No one spoke until they were on the highway, lights flashing past like seconds they couldn't waste anymore. So, Maya asked, what now? Earl looked out the window, thought of Morales, of the girl in the cage, of the breathing wall that whispered remember. We tell the story, he said. To who? To anyone who'll listen. And if no one does? Earl smiled. Just a little. Then we make sure they remember anyway. 3 months later, a whistleblower file surfaced online. No origin traceable. A flash drive appeared on the desk of a journalist who once served in the same unit as Garrison. A podcast aired a two-part series called The Palegate Tapes. It was called Conspiracy. It was called Fiction. But one listener in North Dakota recognized the voice in the background. His uncle. And the rhythm in the static. He heard it again weeks later in his sleep. The jungle doesn't forget. And neither do the ghosts we leave behind. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this journey. A story not just about memory, but about the quiet strength of those who carry the weight of the past to protect the future. If you believe that sacrifice is never meaningless, that some heroes only need a single look to silence a room, please like, share, and subscribe to Endless Stories. We tell the stories time tries to forget, but the heart never does. See you in the next one.